everybody. It's the last night of our interview series for this week. We started on Monday with Jason Kander, Tony Watson, my friend who pitches for the Giants. On Tuesday, we had Barbara Fisher on Wednesday, who was with the Netflix series Tiger King. Yesterday, we had Adisu from the Cory Booker campaign, the campaign manager of the Cory Booker campaign. And today, very honored to have the 4th District's very own Art Cullen. How are you doing, Art?
Great, thanks. You know, I want to ask about the Tiger King. I thought that was Al Kaline. I'm the only person in America who hasn't heard of the Tiger King. I thought it was Al Kaline or Jack Morris.
My dad will get a kick out of that too. I should open up that I got my.
That is a nice shirt.
Art of the Free Press
That
t-shirt.
is a nice shirt. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, you bet. So you're in Storm Lake. How are things in Storm Lake these days?
Well, it's pretty quiet in Lake Wobegon. You could shoot a cannon down Main Street and not hit anybody down Lake Avenue, really.
Yeah.
But the meatpacking plants are going. The immigrant labor force that's terrorized by Steve King, they're reporting to work every day, putting their lives at risk. They're American patriots, and they deserve to be citizens.
Is there any, I know several businesses have upped people's pay for this time. Have you heard anything from that from the local plants or anything?
Yeah, Tyson has given their workers a $600 bonus, and what I know of.
Okay.
And that's supposed to be coming this week, I think.
Okay. Yeah.
But they are running. Obviously, it's an essential industry, food, and so you really got to admire these workers who are putting their own safety at risk by going into a place where there's 1,000 employees,
right,
handling hogs, and it's a scary situation, and they deserve to be respected finally.
Absolutely. The dignity of work as well. And so one of the reasons I wanted to have you on is to talk about local journalism and kind of what state we're in. And even before this virus, because with the virus, we've seen the Sioux City Journal is going to have some employees go on furlough. We saw that with the Register. I don't know about some of the other places, but then what does it mean for a paper like the Storm Lake Times?
Well, we ended last year with a profit of $2,000, and we were going to buy a bottle of champagne and some hot dogs and have a party. And then we got a notice that our health insurance rates are going up $42,000.
Wow.
For the second year in a row. That's 24% per year. And so we started out the year in a $40,000 hole. And then we figured we could dig out of it like we always do. We always seem to survive. And then after the girls' state basketball tournament, the entire state shut down and our ads just disappeared. And so we had this staggering loss in March.
And not to pry too much into money stuff, but like you get most of your money through subscriptions or ads or both?
About half of our revenue comes from advertising, and advertising just completely dried up because if you're not open, there's no need for an ad.
Right.
And so that was a real body blow to us because I mean, we had, like I say, a staggering loss in March, and it's going to be worse in April and May.
Yeah. And to folks, if you guys have a question for either Art or myself, put them in the comments. We'll get those asked too. Just I always forget to mention that at the beginning. So this is one of the few times that a politician gets to interview the journalist.
That's right. I'll get a question in eventually, JD.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is more of a discussion anyways, but I'm just, one of the things that you guys set up was a GoFundMe page to help you get through the year. And so I think we're going to put that in the comment section. So if folks are able to
thank
help
you.
out, yeah, well, if folks are able to help out, there's nobody who has a better pulse, I feel, on the heartbeat of rural Iowa and rural Midwest right now than yourself, Art. And that's how you ended up winning the Pulitzer. Do you want to talk a little bit about how that all came about?
Well, yeah, that was basically we ran a series of editorials about the Des Moines Water Works lawsuit against Buena Vista, Sac, and Calhoun counties in Northwest Iowa, all adjacent counties. And the waterworks sued over nitrate pollution in the Raccoon River that came from drainage tile that was, and the counties are trustees for these drainage districts. And these drainage, the drainage tiles bring nitrogen-laden water, nitrate-laden water to the Raccoon River, which is what people in Des Moines drink from. And as a result, Des Moines has the largest nitrate removal facility in North America. And so the Des Moines Water Works sued the counties to mitigate this pollution, and but the financing of the county's defense for their lawsuit was being kept a secret, and it was because it was being funded by the big agrochemical companies like Monsanto and the Koch brothers. And so anyway, we eventually were able to report who the secret donors were. And we won a Pulitzer-Prize for editorials on government transparency. Who is running Buena Vista County? Is it the Koch brothers, or is it the citizens who elect the Board of Supervisors? That's the basic question. And who controls our funding? Is it the Board of Supervisors, or is it the executives from Monsanto in St. Louis?
Yeah.
And that's really the question for Iowa, is who's running this state anyhow?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we, in 2017, we were flabbergasted when we won the Pulitzer. We were the second smallest newspaper in the history, the 101-year history of the Pulitzers, to win it.
That's pretty darn special. That's awesome. One thing that I've been talking about when it comes to COVID-19, and I mean, we're not quite there yet to see what the other side looks like, but one of the things we can kind of guess at what's going to happen next. One of the things that I'm hopeful for is, we have this district is the second most agriculture producing district in America. And pretty much from where I live to where you live, it's all agriculture.
Right.
And what we're seeing is there's only 2 farm to table restaurants in the entire 39 counties.
Right.
We're seeing farmers who aren't making a dime right now. We're seeing small towns lose their grocery stores. And we kind of scratch your head and wonder, who are we doing this all for?
Right.
And
for a guy in St. Louis or Wichita, that's who.
And well, and that gets to my point of, I think there's so much potential for pennies on the dollar to invest in a infrastructure for regional food hubs, to create a local agriculture system where it's either farm to school, farm to nursing home, farm to community college, farm to prison, certain things like that. We can create that infrastructure, and then the markets can grow based off of that.
Right.
And that's I think that's one thing that you have picked up upon in some of your editorials, and which
well, yeah, it's just one part of trying to sustain rural communities, and
right.
And then how can we sustain those people who don't choose to participate in those kind of local food programs, but the 63-year-old farmer who is been told by the ag establishment all these years that you gotta grow 200 bushel corn, and that's what we do, and go broke doing it. And we have to look at a new way, as you're talking about, a new approach to agriculture, which involves us not shipping 30% of our nitrogen down to Des Moines in the Raccoon River. We're wasting 30% of our nitrogen through these drainage tiles.
And,
and our
and our
rivers are
soil.
polluted from it. And also we can grow corn and soybeans that we can export to China, which doesn't really want them. So the markets are telling us that we've been growing to about 30% too many corn and soybeans and hogs for the last 50 years. And it's finally coming home to roost.
Yeah.
And so something's got to change.
Yeah. I've been in these last few weeks, especially now that March is done, we're starting to prepare for planting season. It's not there yet, but the last month or so, farmers have been talking to their bankers, and I've just been trying to put myself in their shoes right now. If a farmers looking to do either soybeans or corn, you look at the corn market, and this administration has just demolished renewables, and so corn prices are going to dive down, and then you look at the trade war in
I think that didn't the ethanol plant in the Sioux County ethanol plant just shut down, didn't it?
I think they went idle again.
Yeah.
They shut down before. I have to take a look at that.
These are all former Steve King voters.
Well,
I say.
And that's one of my biggest frustrating parts about having him as our congressman, is that there is at a time when we have 55,000 farmers have their back against the wall. That's according to the USDA. Where is the leadership? And when we needed somebody, he's not even on any of the committees. And so, especially the agriculture committee, when we really needed it most. And so,
and I'd also like to ask where Chuck Grassley and Joni Ernst have been as well. They keep saying they have the president's ear.
Right.
And the EPA keeps ruling the other way. And it takes a court to enforce Congress's intent.
Right. Well, and that's exactly right. You look at Ted Cruz is down in Texas praising all his oil refineries down there, and it seems like Trump is always going towards the oil industry and putting our farmers at a disadvantage on a consistent basis. And so it continues to add up. And you look at even like the livestock industry, something as simple as we used to have a country of origin labeling. Let's have that. Let's
right.
do that. Let's not ship in meats from other countries, repackage it and call it American. That's not helping our farmers out. And so I think ultimately in the American economy, and it's as true as in agriculture it is as in anything else, but America hasn't figured out globalization as it affects the working class.
Right.
And that we've shipped out jobs overseas. You see why we don't have masks.
Well, we ship our corn to Mexico, and then we ship Mexicans to Storm Lake to slaughter the hogs that we fed the corn to. And then we ship the finished hog product back to Mexico, and then they further process it and send it to China. Seriously, I've seen Tyson pork from Storm Lake in Mexico. So that's how the cycle works. We flood the Mexican market with corn. We drive everybody broke in Mexico, so they have to come to Storm Lake and Denison and Sioux City to work in our meatpacking plants where we're feeding these hogs. And then we actually send the pork back to Mexico for further processing to ship to China. Yeah. And by the way, Smithfield owns what, 40% of the nation's hogs? It's owned by the Chinese, am I correct?
Yeah, it's at least 25%. I know that. And that's one of the things we talk about is just the monopolization of the industry. You look at our cattle industry, and 2 of the 4 companies that own 85% of the market are from Brazil.
Right.
And so I think there is
China.
Or China, yeah. I think there's so much potential post-COVID 19 to really shape our manufacturing to make sure that we ourselves, that America produces itself and made in America type of thing. And when it comes to agriculture, we're a secure nation because we're a food secure nation. And that's what something Vilsack always talks about. But at a time when the second most agriculture producing district in America, we're not feeding ourselves with the stuff that
we import 80% of our food to Iowa.
Yeah. All right. We got a question here. Let's see. How do we develop an infrastructure to support the shift in the new paradigm in agriculture? So, or do you want to take a crack at it, or?
Well, back a lifetime ago when the Iowa caucuses were going on, we endorsed Elizabeth Warren.
2 months ago. Or
yeah, right. 2 millennia ago, we endorsed Elizabeth Warren because I felt that she really did have that rural infrastructure in mind that I think they're talking about. And what we really need to talk about is resilient agriculture, and or if you prefer, regenerative agriculture. How can we reduce our chemical inputs that are choking the Gulf of Mexico? Because all that nitrate that we're losing, 30% of it goes into the Raccoon River, which ends up in the Mississippi, which ends up in the Gulf of Mexico, and it's creating a dead zone of hypoxia the size of the state of New Jersey and growing every year. And we know we're growing 30% too much corn, and we're feeding 30% too many hogs, and we have to burn about 30% of our corn crop into ethanol. And so why don't we put that land into grass, put cattle on that land, rotate crops, and restore soil health? You can still get 200 bushel corn. You just don't have to use Roundup. And but they've been sold a bill of goods over the years that you cannot control weeds without chemicals. Well, yes, you can. You can do it with winter rye, for example, planting a cover crop. So we've got to pay farmers for environmental services. And again, it's pennies on your meal to pay farmers to sequester carbon from the air and plant it into the soil through grass or rye, or but making the soil alive again, rather than planting into a petrochemical base. We need to approach the landscape from a whole system management, integrated crop and pest management. And it's nothing new. Iowa State's been preaching it for 30 years. The problem is that there's so much money that's stacked up against it that the Koch brothers aren't going to want to see their nitrogen fertilizer industry go away. And by the way, nitrogen is every bit as bad of a greenhouse gas as CO2. And so agriculture right now is a major contributor to climate change. Agriculture could become a major solution to climate change. And Elizabeth Warren had it drafted into her basic plan to increase the size of the Conservation Stewardship Program, written by Tom Harkin, by 15-fold. And that's what we need to do. We need a revolutionary way of thinking about how we pay farmers to be environmental stewards, to be secure and diverse food providers, and to be a solution to climate change. And we can do that. And I hope that Elizabeth Warren will explain the situation to Joe Biden.
Yeah.
And Joe Biden too, Vilsack was his ag advisor, and I mean, he's talking the same language, just not as aggressively as Warren was.
And one of the things
all the Democratic presidential candidates this past cycle endorsed the idea of regenerative agriculture, that is, regenerating the soil's health.
Yep, and they all also, I think, we're on board for enforcing our antitrust laws in agriculture.
Absolutely,
which is part of it too, and that gets to one of the points. What we're seeing now, we saw shelves of meat just go off every grocery store, and so at a time when farmers should be raking in the money, they haven't seen that. If anything, they're I knew a couple farmers a couple months ago were complaining that they couldn't even sell their cattle.
Right, and steaks aren't getting any cheaper.
Right. And so what we're seeing is and I know Warren talked about this. I know a couple other folks did too, that of the consumer dollar, less than 15 cents makes it back to the farmer, which is lowest all time. And so,
Right, actually 15 cents, right?
yeah, yeah.
Right.
And so we got another question here. This is for you, Art. How can towns like Storm Lake be an example for other rural communities in welcoming immigrant workers and entrepreneurs while making clear that all workers have a basic right to organize and earn a living wage? And where can a community like Storm Lake do even better?
Well, I think Storm Lake has been an example of a place that has integrated new neighbors pretty well. About 90% of our elementary school are now children of color, mainly from Latin America. They also come from from around the world, from Malaysia, from Myanmar, from Cuba, a large number of. So we're going to have some tremendous baseball teams here one of these days, JD, with these Cubans coming in. If we could get some Puerto Ricans too, that'd be fantastic. But watch out, Sioux City East. And you know, we really have embraced our immigrant workforce, but I think the questioner has a good point, and that is, you know, who's going to stand up for these people, these undocumented people, particularly, and the working poor, when there are no unions left in rural Iowa. And there was a bunch of who were about to get evicted from a trailer court in Alta, Iowa, about 4 miles from Storm Lake. And most of them were Latino. And some churches were trying to help them deal with an absentee landlord from Canada, and with city officials who were really bent on cleaning up this trailer park, and they were just going to evict everybody. And it wasn't until the Teamsters came in. There wasn't a single Teamsters member living in that trailer court, and the Teamsters came in and stood up for those workers and talked to City Hall. And you see 4 big guys in black jackets walk in, you're going to listen. And the Teamsters came in and they saved those people from getting evicted. And that's the first step in reorganizing labor. Labor's died in Western Iowa over the past 40 years. And the Teamsters are coming in, and it sounds like the United Food and Commercial Workers are starting to get a little more active than they have been. And so we need strong unions to build strong communities. And it promotes a stable workforce. Unions help immigrants stand up for their rights. They can work hand in hand with the company to protect those workers from the terror that Steve King and Donald Trump try to impose on them. And so that's what we're lacking to really make Storm Lake really run on all 8 cylinders. Is we need a good union. And when we had the old amalgamated meat cutters, Storm Lake was a more prosperous place. Everybody did better when people at the packing house did better.
Yeah.
And Tyson has really tried to improve wages and working conditions. They really have in Storm Lake. They're much better than IBP was. But a union could make things even better. And so we were really encouraged to see the Teamsters stand up for completely defenseless people without any resources.
How long ago was that?
A couple of years ago, and they formed a statewide group, and you can find them on Twitter or Facebook. It's called Team Can, and you can join Team Can, and they're a community organizing arm across Iowa of the Teamsters. And it's a really exciting way to reorganize people at the grassroots. Yeah. And get people, and they're organizing around housing, around rent standards, et cetera. And they're not bargaining in the workplace, they're organizing at the grassroots level. You know, it's very exciting.
One article, it was an article probably within a month before I launched my first campaign, so almost 2.5 years ago, it was about Storm Lake. It was in, I believe, the New York Times, and it mentioned a gentleman who started working in the processing plants in the early 80s at $16 an hour as a union member, and then they de-unionized.
Went down to $6.
And then
overnight, it went from like 12 or $14 an hour down to $6 an hour overnight when IBP took over.
Wow. And then now he retired a couple years ago at $16 an hour.
Right. So if his wages would have kept pace, he should have been making $125,000 a year at age 67. And you know what? If you've been slaughtering hogs for 35 years, you deserve $125,000, in my opinion.
Yeah. Amen.
And people who don't think so ought to take a look inside a meatpacking plant someday and see how they'd like it.
Yeah. We got another question here. Is the Iowa Farmers Union able to get much traction on the renewable fuel standard?
Well, obviously not, unfortunately, because the Trump administration is riding roughshod over it. Yeah. The Iowa Farmers Union have been real clear in their support for enforcing the renewable fuel standard, and as have other farm groups. But clearly, no, they haven't been successful, and that's because we've got a bonehead for a president.
Well, here's one thing that I tell folks all the time about renewables. I met with the head of CARB, which is the California Air Resource Board, and that's 1/6 of our nation's GDP is in California. And so if they decide to change the transportational fuels, that the whole industry goes to what their guidelines are. And that's a tremendous amount of power.
Right.
And so I met with this guy, and he goes, he told me, he said, if we go carbon, if our goal is to get to carbon neutral or decarbonize, we don't get there with electronic cars alone. Renewable fuels have to be part of that equation. And so I've been going around.
It's a stepping stone.
Right. And it's ever with ethanol, with biodiesel, with all this, we need to continue to invest in research in this to go to that next step, that next level. And because, I mean, even if all the cars went.
Do you think Monsanto really wants switchgrass to be an ethanol source? I don't think so.
Right.
Do you think they really want hemp to be an ethanol source? I doubt it.
But
or sweet sorghum? No. They want corn to be the source so they can control, so they can get their cut.
Right.
They don't get a cut with switchgrass. And so that's why the cellulosic ethanol plants have never taken off. It's because the seed and chemical complex doesn't want it to work. And guess who owns these plants? The seed and chemical complex. They bought them up, the cellulosic plants. They don't want it to work.
And that gets back to monopolies.
Right.
We need to enforce our antitrust laws.
Right.
So before.
And I know I sound like a crazy conspiracy theorist, but you have the world's greatest scientists at Pioneer in Johnston, Iowa, and they own this cellulosic ethanol plant at Nevada, and they couldn't get it. They couldn't get any ethanol out of it.
Yeah.
Now you tell me, how does that work?
Yeah.
They can figure out how to grow corn in a drought, but they can't figure out how to squeeze a little juice out of a plant. Come on.
I got something for you here. Your book.
Oh, that's a damn good book, I hear.
All right. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? Oh, did we freeze? Do you want to talk a little bit about your book?
Oh, well, yeah. Okay. So I'd love to. After we won the Pulitzer, we got a call from this New York book publisher. Said they wanted me to write a book. I said, I have no idea what I'd write a book about. And I laughed and hung up. And my brother John said, who is that? And I said, it was a publisher from New York. They want me to write a book. I said, I have no idea what to write a book about. And he said, call him back, tell him you got an idea, and just call it Storm Lake. So that's how I ended up writing a book about Storm Lake. And it's really, I call it a cultural history wrapped in a memoir. It's about kind of the history of Storm Lake and how, you know, the native people were here first. We kind of came and took it away from them, plowed it all up, destroyed the lake. And then we saved the lake by dredging it over the last 20 years. And we're looking at new ways of agriculture, and we're bringing in new immigrants from around the world who are building new businesses in Storm Lake until they were wiped out by this virus.
Right.
But our main street is filled with Latino-owned businesses, and that are putting their foot on the first rung of the ladder to American success. And so that's really what the book is about: is how all these world forces swirl around this little town in the middle of nowhere, and the issues of agriculture, climate change, immigration, politics, and racism, how it all plays out in a little town. And J.D. Scholten merits, he's featured in the book, where I was hoping that he'll take down this clown that we have for a congressman, and I think it's going to happen. And but that's what the book is about: is kind of how Storm Lake has evolved as a community over the years, and how there's really no place like it that I can think of in America.
And if somebody wanted to buy it, where can they go?
Well, they could order it from prairielights.com in Iowa City. It's Iowa's greatest independent bookstore, and I think it's on sale in Sioux City too. Is there an independent bookstore in Sioux City?
Not that I don't think so.
And there's Beaverdale Books too, and then you can also get it online at other big retailers. Yeah. But Prairie Lights in Iowa City would be the place, and it's online, and they're the sweetest people in the world, and we're supporting an Iowa business. And absolutely. I think there's an independent bookstore in Sioux City, but I'm not sure.
I have to. I should know.
Right.
You put me on the spot.
Well, what I really want to know, JD, are we going to get a season in this year?
Oh man, I'm praying for it. So we'll have to see.
What's Tony think?
What's that?
What's Tony think? Is his arm ready?
I mean, what he's doing is he's down in Florida and he's just thrown into a net every day. And
they don't even give him a catcher?
Well, because of spacing and everything.
Yeah. Well, he's 60 feet 6 inches. Isn't that good enough?
Well, but the ball is the same. They'll transfer germs.
Oh, I gotcha.
The amount of times you touch your lips or.
All right.
So, yeah.
Well, anyway, it's driving me crazy.
Oh, I know. But I mean, hey, this is these are tough times, and so anyhow, we appreciate all that you do, Art. We appreciate if you want to help him out, there's the GoFundMe part in our comments. Throw him a couple bucks if you can.
Thank you.
We need his voice out there, and so
we need you in Congress too.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
You're gonna make it this time, JD.
You know what? In the marketplace, there's book people for Sioux City here. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yes, book people.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, we're getting old, JD. The old gray cells ain't what they used to be. Too many Budweisers over the dam.
Oh, I know. Hey, I appreciate your time, Art. Hope Peach is your dog, Peach?
Yeah, Peach. Peach the news hound.
Yeah, hope he's doing all right.
Okay. Well, thank you, JD. I appreciate being on.
You bet.